Hey everyone, welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation. Today's episode is a deep dive into the future of human centered innovation. Joining Preston and I today is Dr. Miki Vorvoreanu, Principal Applied Scientist at Microsoft. Miki's career has spanned academia and industry, shaping how we think about UX, human computer interaction, and most recently, the responsible development of artificial intelligence. She's one of the lead authors of Microsoft Guidelines for Human AI Interaction, a foundational framework for building AI that works with people, not just for them. Whether she's helping build startup accelerator programs or guiding how AI should behave ethically at a global tech giant, Mickey's work reminds us innovation isn't just about what technology can do, it's often about what it should do. Mickey, welcome to Breakthrough Innovation. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Awesome. So, Mickey, to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from.
Well, most literally, I come from Romania, and I came from Romania to attend grad school in the U.S. at Purdue University. And then I've always been fascinated by Americans' people careers because, growing up in Romania, you would retire from the job you started after college. And so I never thought those kinds of adventures would happen to me. I thought I would always, follow an academic trajectory and be a professor and then retire as a professor. But then after getting tenure, it turns out that there's this thing called post-tenure blues, where you're like, okay, this is it. This is my life. This is what it's going to look like. It's so predictable, even though turns out life is not really predictable as we thought it would be. We don't have the kind of stability that we assumed back in the early 2000s. But one thing led to the another. I got recruited into Microsoft about 8 years ago, and I am working on responsible artificial intelligence in Microsoft's group called Ether, which stands for AI Ethics and Effects in Engineering and Research. And I've been a responsible AI researcher for a few years now, almost about 5 years now. But I am one of those people who say, in spite of me doing this for a living, that our AI must die.
Well, I mean, like any AI must die. Is that what you're
No,
saying?
AI, RAI, responsible AI, responsible
Responsible.
AI. Yes, RAI must die. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I will admit that is a wonderful hot take that I love the controversy around it because we do hear so much about responsible AI. I feel like I've got to ask, what's the background of this? Like, where does this come from? And maybe explain a little bit more about your thoughts here.
Yeah, so my thoughts here are, we're looking at RAI as if it were something, supplementary, something they're doing maybe on the side, maybe because, we have to jump through a few hoops, or maybe because, out of the goodness of our hearts. And so it's perceived as this thing that's kind of external to building AI products, right? And then I'm like, this is ridiculous. If we were to building cars, would we think that no, putting in a steering wheel, I mean, it's really nice, but we don't have time for that. Or, putting in brakes. I mean, come on. Like, you could figure out, you could find a hill or something to stop against. And so it's really, really ridiculous that we perceive responsible AI as something extraneous or something additional or something extra work to do. And my question to people is, do you want to build a good product or not? And if you want to build a shitty car, then, say that and maybe get another job building something else, right? And so to me, responsible AI or whatever it is that you want to call it, it's really, people not wanting to build a shitty product, wanting to build a product that actually is usable and useful and, people don't crash into trees or drive off the cliff using it. And so for that reason alone, I think that everybody who works in AI actually works in responsible AI, whether they know it or not. And yeah, there are some research topics that are at the frontier, and there's maybe a few responsible AI researchers like me. I still need a job. But other than that, I think for most people, thinking of RAI as just like a couple of people do it and we just do AI, that's just ridiculous.
So that's actually pretty similar to what JL and I would say about innovation. It's because we see a lot of companies who end up having a little skunk works or innovation group, and they're responsible for all the innovation. When in reality, what works best is if innovation is just part of everything. It's just how we, and that's where innovation is successful. So that seems to me like we're talking about the same concept. Is that right, Mickey?
Yeah, I think they could be very much equivalent and very much similar. I think the question of innovation is a little bit more complicated, especially as you get into organizations that are very large. Once you have hundreds of thousands of people, unfortunately, not everybody is empowered to innovate as they're working on their, small piece of the cog. However, even if you are working on a very, very small cog or a piece of that cog, you could still practice responsible AI, and you should still practice responsible AI, even if perhaps, unfortunately, you may or may not be empowered to innovate that much.
Well, and I love the analogy to cars because I think that hits home so well. Because we all know there are people who make cars that are not high quality cars, right? Like, I won't name any brands because I've worked with a few of them and I don't want to burn any bridges, but there's been low quality cars out there. And in my mind, the reason people build high quality cars, or let's say safe cars, that might be a better way to say it. The reason people build safe cars is risk mitigation, right? I wonder from an AI perspective, what's the risk of building an unsafe AI?
Well, so I think there has been a lot of conversation about risks that can result from AI, right? And then this has been a very, very old conversation, and we can list a number of them. What I really want to emphasize is that building AI responsibly does not necessarily mean that we're hand building like a $500,000 car, right? No, I mean, we're building Hondas, and we should be building Hondas, right? And I don't know, like they're not super expensive, they're mass produced, right? But we know them for reliability. And I think when most cars, even those that are not very good quality, they still have brakes, they still have
Right.
steering wheels, right? I
Yeah.
mean, otherwise it would be a really incomplete product. So I want to make sure that I don't refer to building AI responsibly as just building, like a luxury car. No, it's just a car, right? Of course, there are many harms, harms to entire demographic groups. One of the and a lot of conversations have been had about this. One of the harms that I'm particularly focused in lately, my team and I have been working on this particular harm of over-reliance on AI. And so the research literature defines over-reliance on AI as the phenomenon of people accepting AI outputs that are incorrect or incomplete. And it's not because people are stupid or lazy. It's because we design these systems that will make mistakes in a way that doesn't actually embrace designing for error. And so we make it very, very difficult oftentimes for people to spot, especially with generative AI, when outputs might be incorrect or incomplete, right? And also we know that AI makes mistakes in ways that are very different than what we would expect from a human being. And that messes with something in our heads, messes with our decision-making process in a way where we are seeing that when you have a task that you're asking that needs to be done, okay, and you give that task to a group of people working with AI, you give that same task to a group of people working alone, and then to AI working alone, and we are seeing repeatedly in research studies that people working with AI actually do worse than when they're working alone or when the AI is working alone. Okay. And so basically, we're creating a product trying to help people be more productive or whatever it is that we're trying to do. But we're actually seeing in research that it backfires and people are actually maybe working faster, but making more mistakes. Okay. And so that is a bad product. Okay. So unless we actually think about how to mitigate that and how to change the way we're thinking about designing AI in order to embrace the fact that it's going to make mistakes because it is probabilistic, right? Then we're just making cars without, I don't know, doors or steering wheels, or just not I'm not referring to optional things like seat belts, right? Right? I'm referring to very, very fundamental things where the car does not take you from point A to point B.
Yeah. And I think, to go back to that point of risk, I mean, the risk for companies is pretty large. If a car built a, or if a manufacturer built a car without brakes, they'd be sued in minutes. A company that uses AI without brakes faces some very similar consequences.
Right, right. And it's not only the legal consequences, right? But we see
Loyalty, all
that
of it.
Over-reliance on AI, basically at some point people figure out that, oh my God, I followed this thing, I trusted it, and it actually led me to make a mistake. This mistake can be costly. If I'm a medical doctor, it can cost
Right.
the health of a patient. If I use AI to identify edible mushrooms, people have died. If people who use your product die, guess what? You're going to lose customers in the most horrendous way possible. Pardon the bad Romanian humor. So, no, but it does lead to product abandonment, and it leads to serious, not only loss of productivity, but loss of trust, very, very costly mistakes, depending on where the AI system is used. And also, this phenomenon of over-reliance on AI makes human oversight inefficient. You hear this everywhere. You hear this in the EU AI Act. Oh, just put a human in the loop, have a human oversee the system, everything's going to be fine. No, everything is not going to be fine, because we know that this phenomenon, this tricky phenomenon of over-reliance on AI, makes it difficult for people to effectively oversee the system, because again, people can't really catch reliably when it is right and when it is wrong. It's a very complex phenomenon. It's a very tricky phenomenon. We've written a couple of white papers about it, reviewing the research literature, and these are available for anyone to read if they want to understand more. But it's one of the examples, one of the harms that I focus on. Of course, I don't want to discount, that there are harms to groups of people, there are harms to the environment, there are huge things that need to be considered. It's just that this is, the small part that I happen to work on. It's not the most important one.
I think just as you were describing this, I think part of the issue is that we still consider AI a computer, which technically it is, but the way that computer programs have been developed is very different from the way AI is. And you used the word probabilistic, and I think that we assume that AI will behave just like these other computers do, where if you put in the same request, it'll give you the same response again and again. That's not the case with AI. It feels to me like AI is closer to the human fallibility, and there's a bit of that randomness, is that humans don't do exactly the same thing every time, and we're better off just not thinking of AI like a deterministic computer.
Because it's not, but here is a huge paradigm shift, right? Because for people building computer systems, we need to shift the paradigm, and we need to build differently, right? And for people using, like, you would go to the computer whenever you wanted precision, right, and accuracy. Okay, internet search, whatever, but still, it used to be at least pretty darn good, right? And now all of a sudden you're used to relying on that computer, and now your computer is messing with you, or your computer is wrong, right? So that is a very different interaction paradigm. And this is where, things like the guidelines for human AI interaction that you mentioned in the introduction are super important, because they were made for AI systems. They were made for systems that are probabilistic, and they make it clear how important it is to help people establish useful and realistic mental models of what the heck it is that they're working with, right? And users cannot and should not expect AI features or products to work the same way as computers did in the past, right? So we need a new way of relating to these things. Maybe make the equivalent, like the way you drive and the way you relate to maybe an electric car or an autonomous vehicle is very different from like a manual car, like a stick shift car, right? You need to have a change of paradigm. You need to understand that technology a little bit. You need to understand its capabilities and limitations in order to be able to use it well.
So I know, so Mickey, we're getting close to the end of the episode here. So I'm curious, if you could help our listeners shift their paradigm just a little bit, like what is the paradigm you would hope they adopt?
So, design for error. If you are building AI systems, you need to change the way you think about designing them, and maybe use things like, we have a framework for identifying and mitigating the risk of over-reliance on AI. We have these guidelines for human AI interaction, right? You need to shift the way you design your products. There are many things that very few products do in their UI to mitigate over-reliance on AI. Very few people are thinking about that, right? And I think on both sides, whether you're a builder or whether you're a user of these AI systems, I think it's really important to be transparent about both capabilities and limitations. Knowing, however, that even when I understand the limitations of AI, I still over rely. I still occasionally, accept outputs that are incomplete or incorrect. And we keep telling people, oh, go on and verify. Verification is not easy. Right now, the UI paradigms for verifying information are horrendously difficult. But I think together on the builder and on the user side, it is a really, really important to work together to destroy AI hype and to work towards a realistic and useful mental model of what these systems can and cannot do and how well.
I love it. I love it. So, Mickey, if anyone has questions about AI or wants to collaborate with you around, I was about to say responsible AI, and I almost got my hand slapped about how they can use AI more responsibly. What's the best way for them to get into contact with you?
So probably find me on LinkedIn under not my nickname, but my actual name, which is Mihaela Vorvoreanu. If you can spell it, you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you can't, that's fine. We'll encounter each other some way or another.
I will make sure it's spelled correctly in the episode notes and all that sort of stuff. So it'll be out there. People will be able to find you. Mickey, thank you so much. This is one of those conversations I probably could have continued for another hour or two, really digging into. So I really appreciate your time, your dedication to the topic. For everyone else who's been listening along with us all the way to the end, I would be curious in the comments, talk about a time when AI led you astray. I know it's happened to me and it's been embarrassing and I've had to walk some things back. So I'd be curious, what are some of the other areas where you've seen the risk? I'd love to hear your story. And then if you know someone who's trying to implement something in AI or working with AI in a professional manner, pass this episode on to them, introduce them to Mickey and all her great knowledge to pay it forward. And then while you're doing that, don't forget to leave a rating, a review, and all that fun stuff for us because it helps us out a whole bunch. But that said, thanks again, Mickey. It was really great talking to you. Thank you to everyone else who listened all the way to the end, and we'll see you all next time on Breakthrough Innovation. Thanks.
Thank you.